Billionaire's twins propose to their nanny to marry their father. What the billionaire did will shock you. Hi fam, welcome to Queen of Afro Tales. If you're just tuning into this channel, please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us where you're watching from. Glass shattered loudly on the floor as King Donald's voice roared through the palace like an angry lion. I said out! The trembling young nanny didn't wait for a second warning. She bolted past the shocked guards, her apron flapping like a white flag of surrender. Princess Emma peeked from behind a velvet curtain, arms folded tightly, eyes unblinking. That's number 27, she whispered to herself. In the royal nursery, Prince George had smeared cocoa butter all over his sister's braids. Princess Oge responded by headbutting him. The wails rising from the children's wing echoed as far as the marble-columned courtyard where Auntie Amaka stood, arms akimbo, her voice already shaking the air like thunderclouds. What is this? Must this palace turn into a war front before peace can reign again? She cried. She was fat, in her mid-60s, formidable, tired, weak, and fed up. Immediately, King Donald slammed the palace door so hard that the chandelier in the hallway trembled. Where is Auntie Amaka? He barked, his voice slicing through the air like a cutlass through palm fronds. A young palace guard swallowed hard and pointed toward the east wing. In the children's chamber, Your Majesty. Without another word, Donald stormed past him, cloak billowing, eyes like a storm that had overstayed its welcome. His steps echoed with purpose, rage, and grief yet to be buried. 4 years, 4 damn years since Queen Naomi took her last breath on the birthing bed, leaving behind 3 children and a husband who had turned colder than a politician's promise. His children were growing up like royalty in exile, surrounded by luxury but starving for parental affection. King Donald, once vibrant, beloved, generous, had become a shadow draped in fine brocade, a man running an empire by day and haunted by ghosts by night. He burst into the nursery to find Auntie Amaka, head wrapped, wrapper tied like battle gear, holding a piece of chalk and a cup of warm pap. George, I've told you, don't chew the chalk, he shouted. But I like it. The little prince protested, his cheeks puffed like meat pie. Mummy used to give us cereal, Princess Og pouted, clutching her stuffed elephant. Princess Emma rolled her eyes. At 6, she was already carrying the spiritual weight of an entire monarchy. Donald folded his arms. This is chaos. Amaka didn't flinch. She turned around slowly, eyes calm, voice cooler than rainwater. These are your children, not ambassadors of chaos. What you see here is survival, Donald. Children surviving your grief. That one entered like bullet. I didn't come here for you to lecture me. I want to verify some things about the communal land from you. But you need it, she fired back. And I need help. I'm too old to be chasing after twins with sugar in their blood. He sighed deeply, pressing 2 fingers into his temple. Then get help. Hire someone. Anyone. I don't care. Don't worry, Amaka said, smirking. I already have. She starts tomorrow, and she won't take nonsense from you. Donald turned sharply. Who told you I give nonsense? She raised one eyebrow. Your silence, your glares, you're ghosting your own children? Should I go on? He grunted and walked out before her truth could finish tap dancing on his ego as he remembered the evil day that changed everything. It had rained the day Queen Naomi died. Not the gentle kind that blessed cassava fields, no. This was thunderous, angry, mournful, as if the skies themselves had foreseen the heartbreak blooming within the palace walls. Donald had paced the grand corridor outside the royal birthing chamber for 7 unbearable hours. The air was thick with the scent of hibiscus and antiseptic, and each scream from within sent shards of terror through his chest. Push, Your Highness, please push. Nurses scrambled. Midwives chanted. Auntie Amaka clutched her rosary so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't soothe. It strangles. A tiny cry rang out. Then another. Twins. A girl and a boy. But Naomi never opened her eyes again. She had whispered his name. Don. Ald, with a small smile, as if cradling it on her final breath. And then she was gone. He didn't weep that day. He didn't speak either. He stared at her body, his queen, his best friend, his laughter, his peace, and something inside him simply fractured. He walked away from her body, away from the newborns, away from the midwives and their apologies. He locked himself in his chambers for 2 days. When he emerged, he was not the same. The palace wore black for 30 days, but King Donald never changed his robes. On the first day after Naomi's passing, he stood in the center of the royal chamber, staring at the space she once occupied. The vanity still scented with her perfume, her slippers neatly tucked by the foot of the bed, the comb that still carried strands of her thick black hair. He banned music in the palace. No drums, no flutes, no lullabies, and stopped visiting the nursery. Auntie Amaka begged, "Donald, Biko, the twins, they need to know their father." But he would only nod and disappear behind endless meetings, contracts, and state dinners. Always regal, always composed, and entirely absent. In private, though, behind closed doors, he grieved like thunder trapped beneath marble. He slept in Naomi's gown once, curled around it like a drowning man clutching driftwood. Her laughter haunted the corridors. Her phantom kisses lingered on his neck. What remained was a man cloaked in silence, ruling with precision but no soul. Every smile had vanished, every tender gesture extinguished. He ruled like a man punishing the world for stealing his heartbeat. He walked through her memories like a man walking barefoot on broken glass, silent, bleeding inside, refusing to stop. He finally mustered the courage to behold and carry the twins 2 months after their birth. Nevertheless, Chika Ume, the just-employed nanny, was no ordinary nanny. Born in Owerri to a retired headmistress and a civil engineer, she had the kind of upbringing that danced between books and bedtime kisses. Her smile had soothed dozens of crying infants in creches from Port Harcourt to Enugu. But beneath that gentle glow was fire, a sharp mind trained in early childhood development, with certifications tucked neatly beneath her well-worn resume. Over 6 years, she'd worked in prestigious homes, senators, bankers, diplomats, often staying long after her contracts ended because their children simply wouldn't let her go. Kids loved her. Parents trusted her. But when her last employer relocated to Canada and begged her to come along, she declined. "Something's telling me my story's not done here," she had said with a small, knowing smile. A few weeks later, she had been sipping Fanta under the almond tree behind her flat, scrolling absent-mindedly through a WhatsApp nanny group she belonged to. One filled with childcare professionals, caregivers, and gossip-heavy voice notes. Buried between a forwarded flyer for a diaper promo and someone selling second-hand baby monitors was a peculiar message posted without a name. "Urgent call for royal nanny, confidential, elite experience required, discretion, strength, patience, and a heart made of something greater than gold." There was no contact number, just a simple directive. "Deliver application in person at the Palace of Ogbunike. Ask for Auntie Amaka." She read it twice, then thrice. Her heart stirred. She'd heard the whispers about the silent king, the motherless children, the revolving door nannies who never made it past day 5. Many in her group responded with laughing emojis and dramatic voice notes. "Abeg, who wan go carry palace curse?" But Chika, she packed her bag that same night. The next morning, with her file of CV and certificates and a wild hope fluttering in her chest, she stepped into the gates of destiny, where King Donald's marble fortress loomed ahead, and Auntie Amaka, clipboard in hand, was waiting like a judge on Judgment Day. Her instinct had brought her before the gates of the royal palace in Ogbunike, and it had never disappointed her. Auntie Amaka was already skeptical. She had seen too many polished smiles crumble under the palace's chaos. She sat across from Chika in the palace's West Wing parlor, wielding a notepad and suspicion like weapons. "You know where you are, Reby?" she started without looking up. "This is not one of those compound houses where everybody eats from one cooler and calls it bonding. Here, the children break people like breadsticks." Chika nodded. "I understand, Mom, but breadsticks taste better with soup. I just need to know what kind of soup I'm stepping into." That earned a sharp glance from Auntie Amaka. So you have mouth. I also have ears, patience, and hands that are excellent with tangled braids." She paused. "You've been a nanny for how long?" 6 years. Any special training? Yes, Mom. Certified in child psychology and emergency care. I'm fluent in English and Igbo. I can also speak French and Italian languages. You can speak French? Oui, maman. Comment vas-tu aujourd'hui? Chica asked with a grin. For the first time in what felt like months, Auntie Amaka chuckled. Loud. Chai, this one has liver. Maybe even kidney. She thought out loud. Then came the last round. She was led into the nursery for a practical test. The moment Chica stepped into the royal playroom, chaos greeted her like an old friend. Blocks scattered. Crayons scribbled across priceless Persian rugs. Princess Oge was tugging one of Prince George's ears like a stubborn mango, and MMA, regal and pouting in her sparkly sneakers, was rolling her eyes dramatically, arms folded like a tiny empress on strike. Then she did something no one expected. She whistled with her fingers. Not shrill, not sharp, a soft melodic trill that cut through the noise like sunlight through Harmattan mist. The children froze. What was that? Emma asked, narrowing her eyes suspiciously. Chica crouched low, arms stretched out like an old friend arriving after a long journey. A magic whistle, she said playfully. It only works on royal children who haven't smiled today. George giggled. Oge tilted her head. Emma tried to hold on to her suspicion, but her lips twitched. Are you the new nanny? She said finally. Yes, princess. I'm Chica. May I join you in your kingdom? Emma glanced at the twins. They nodded solemnly. Permission granted. Within minutes, she had them building a tower out of pillows, assigning roles like Defender of the Royal Bananas and Princess of Puzzles. George laughed so hard he hiccuped. Emma forgot to act sophisticated and joined a game of tiptoe tag. Oge offered Chica her doll to babysit, a gesture no nanny had ever earned on day one. Auntie Amaka watched it all from behind the door. When the door swung open again, her eyes were moist. You start tomorrow, early, before the cock even yawns. Chica beamed. Thank you, Ma. I didn't do it for you, Auntie Amaka said gruffly, though a smile tugged at her mouth. Those children are all we have. Take good care of them, or I'll personally escort you out. After snack time, Chica sang a lullaby in Igbo, a song her late grandmother used to hum while grinding ogbono. Little Oge fell asleep on her lap. George curled around her legs like a puppy. And Amaya, with a dimpled grin she rarely used anymore, whispered, I don't want you to leave us. I'm here as long as you'll have me, princess, Chica replied softly, stroking her hair. That evening at dinner, King Donald sat across from his children in the grand dining hall, distractedly sipping palm wine while scanning a policy brief. Father, Emma said, interrupting with surprising firmness. He looked up. Yes? We like her, she declared. Like who? The new nanny. Donald raised an eyebrow. Already. She speaks Italian, and she sings funny songs. And George says she smells like vanilla too. She says she knows where the moon sleeps, Oge piped in between mouthfuls of yam. And she said we're more important than gold, Emma added quickly. Donald blinked. The last time they had spoken this much during a meal, Naomi had still been alive. I'll meet her tomorrow, he said finally, reaching for his glass. But inside, behind the expression he wore like a crown, something stirred, something warm. Chica was in the palace courtyard that morning, clad in a soft blue dress and humming to herself as she sorted the twins' playthings into bright-colored bins. Emma was perched on the edge of the water fountain, narrating a dream about riding a giant parrot, while George tried to convince Oge that pebbles could turn into sweets if you kissed them. And then the door to the east wing creaked. The marble staircase whispered under careful footsteps. Chica's spine tingled with a strange awareness. King Donald emerged into the courtyard like a shadow being dragged back into sunlight. He wore dark senator wear, simple but commanding. Tall, regal, every step deliberate, eyes sharp. He was far more handsome than Chica had prepared for, more intense than photos could ever suggest. But it wasn't his looks that stunned her most. It was the cold, the weight in his gaze, like he hadn't spoken to Joy in years and wasn't sure if he trusted her with his children. Emma shot up. Daddy, this is Chica, our new nanny we told you about. Donald's eyes flicked from child to nanny, slowly, measuring. I've heard, he said simply. His voice was deep, distant. Chica stood straight and dipped her head respectfully. "Good morning, Your Majesty." He studied her. "I expected someone older." He said. She smiled. The children expected someone scarier. That caught him off guard. His brows lifted slightly in surprise. George ran toward him and tugged at his arm. "Daddy, she sings about moon lions and lets Oge feed the fish from her hand. She also knows how to make jollof with sweet corn," Emma added proudly. Donald's gaze returned to Chica. "Who gave you access to the kitchen?" Chica didn't flinch. "Auntie Amaka did. The cook had an emergency." A pause. The tension between them buzzed like a taut violin string. He said. "I'll see." He turned and walked away, the heel of his shoe thudding like that of a soldier behind him. But what Chica didn't see, what no one saw, was that he paused at the corridor corner, behind the archway, just for a second to study her with a strange interest. Yet, he was meaner to her, as was seen on the second week of her arrival in the palace. She had reorganized the twins' playroom into theme zones, one corner for puzzles, one for reading, another for sensory play. The children adored it, so did their tutor. But Donald, inspecting it during his routine evening rounds, frowned. "Who gave you permission to rearrange their space?" Chica looked up from where she sat cross-legged with Oge, quietly building a block tower. "No one, Your Majesty," she replied. "Then you've overstepped." She rose to her feet, brushing her skirt smooth. "Children respond better to structure they can explore, not confinement." Donald's brow arched. "This is not your house." Her expression didn't falter. "No, it's your home. Or at least it should be with joyful sounds." A long pause. He left without another word. The next morning, a note appeared in the playroom desk. "The new arrangement stays at a music corner." One afternoon, Oge wandered off during the twins' storytelling hour. Panic rose. After 15 frantic minutes, they found her curled asleep in a corner of the East Garden. Donald was livid. She could have been taken, hurt, lost, and you were telling tales. He displaced the fury of a man out of control of his anger, until he realized she wasn't defending herself. Her eyes stung, but she stayed rooted. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I left to pick up my phone from my room, only to come back and see that she left the nursery." "I'm deeply sorry." Her gentle apology got to him. Hence, he didn't dismiss or punish he, and that was strange for a man who had dismissed workers for lesser offense. In the evening, rain tapped impatiently on the palace windows while thunder rolled like distant drums. Chica stood at the top of the main staircase, the twins clinging to her skirt and Emma clutching her diary. They had been waiting for over an hour. King Donald had canceled yet another family session with the therapist Chica had introduced weeks earlier, without notice, without explanation. When he finally appeared at the landing, his eyes were tired, his shirt askew, and his expression unreadable. "You had us waiting," she said gently, shielding the children with calm. "I had state matters to attend to," he snapped. "Do I need your permission to govern my own kingdom now?" "No," she replied evenly, "but you need your presence to father your children." That struck deep, sharper than anger. He stepped closer. "You seem to forget who I am." "No," she said quietly. "You forget who they are." He was about to respond some cutting retort, but paused, because Chica wasn't angry. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even trying to guilt him. "The world needs your leadership," she said, voice low and steady. "But they need your heart, and I won't be the one to teach them that love is something they outgrow." He didn't speak, didn't move, but something cracked behind his eyes, and for the first time, he looked at her not as a staff member, not as a problem to manage, but as the only person in the palace brave enough to confront the ache he had locked away. Chica turned to the children. "Let's go, darlings. It's okay to hope, but it's also okay to sleep without the thing you hoped for." As they descended the stairs, Emma slipped her small hand into Donald's. He flinched, then slowly closed his fingers around hers. When Chica glanced back once, his gaze was already on her. Different this time, heavy with everything unspoken. That moment was the seed. He didn't apologize that night, but the next morning, he showed up early for their next session. Sat in silence with his children, then listened. Chica's strength had finally drawn him out, not with force but with grace that refused to bow to power. By the third week, the palace was humming, not just with music. It had long returned under Chica's influence, even if unofficially, but with voices, whispers, side glances, raised brows. The cooks had taken to lingering by the kitchen window that overlooked the courtyard whenever Chica passed. The younger guards were standing straighter. The older ones smiled more. "Nawa-o," one housekeeper muttered, watching Chica twirl Oge in the garden like a leaf in a breeze. "This one has magic in her step. Abi, even the king no fit scowl reach before Shide smile him into confusion," came the reply. Of course, none of them dared say those words in Donald's presence. But they saw it. Everyone saw it. The slight delay in his stride whenever she was near. The way his eyes lingered a beat longer than necessary. How his voice dropped in volume, just slightly, when addressing her in front of the children. Chica also brought language into their lives like a vibrant gust of color. With French flashcards and Swahili songs and basic sign language woven into storytelling, she turned foreign phrases into household fun. "Comment ça va, papa?" MMA would call down the hall. "Très bien, princesse," King Donald once replied absently, then blinked in surprise at himself. He never admitted it, but he began brushing up with a French app at night, just to keep up. Every wall that grief had built within those children, walls of silence, fear, confusion, began to crack. And through those cracks, the light of Chica's love poured in. King Donald may not have said it aloud, not yet, but he was watching and basking in it all, and something inside him was thawing. A few weeks later, Chica fell ill. It started with a sneeze, then two. By noon, she was curled on the bed in her room, her wrapper pulled up to her chin, her usually radiant face flushed with fever. She tried to keep reading aloud from the enchanted baobab, but her voice cracked with every other sentence. Emma frowned. "Miss Chica, your eyes look sleepy, but you're not blinking." "I'm just tired and sick, baby," Chica whispered, brushing a shaky hand through Oge's curls. George climbed onto the bed. "Is it malaria?" Chica forced a smile. "No, sweetheart, just a small cold." The children quickly ran to their father's chamber and pleaded with him to come and check on their nanny. Chica had already slipped into a fevered nap, sweat lining her brow when they arrived with him. Chica lay curled beneath the covers, strands of her natural hair clinging to her temples. A book lay forgotten on the side table, pages rippling under the ceiling fan. He sat beside her, awkward in his own palace, watching her chest rise and fall. He called the royal physician to come over, then unsure why, he reached for the basin of water by the nightstand, dipped the cloth in, and gently pressed it to her forehead. "Dad, she didn't finish the story for us. Could you please continue from where she stopped?" Oge murmured. King Donald looked around, spotted the book, and sighed, then opened to the bookmark page and began reading aloud. His voice, unused to gentleness, found a new rhythm, slowly, quietly. "And beneath the great tree, the lion bowed, not to the crown, but to the heart that taught him how to feel again." He looked up. She was asleep, peaceful, but her fingers curled loosely around his. And this time, he didn't pull away until the doctor arrived. Blinking against the glow, Chica sat up slowly, groggy, limbs weak, and turned toward the small couch near the window. There, slouched in an awkward tangle of limbs and royal fabric, was King Donald, fast asleep. One hand rested on the edge of her mattress, the other cradling a book open to the same story she'd read aloud the night before. She stared. Longer than she should. The man who ruled like a statue had stayed with her, all night. Just then the door creaked. The twins barreled in like sunshine on legs, George in one sock, Ogie gripping a colored pencil, both shouting over each other. "She's awake! George drew you like a flower, but I drew you like a rainbow." Enema entered with a regal calm behind them, holding a tray of sliced pawpaw and a slightly wrinkled card. It read, "Feel better or we will cry and break something." Chica laughed, warm and hoarse. King Donald stirred, confused, blinking rapidly. "What? You fell asleep," Emma said plainly. "Like a guardian lion. We took pictures." Chica met his eyes. This time, neither of them looked away. He cleared his throat and stood slowly. "I'll have breakfast sent up." "Are you going to read her another story?" George asked, climbing onto the bed. Donald smiled faintly. "Only if she behaves." The room echoed with laughter, and just like that, something unspoken was now understood. Woven into the space between soup trays and scattered crayons, wrapped in innocence and strengthened by care. After eavesdropping two gossiping housemaids speculating about Chica in the king's growing tension, Auntie Amaka summoned Chica with all the flair of a courtroom judge. "You and His Majesty, is there anything I need to know before I call the village council?" Chica blinked. "Ma? Nothing, oh. We barely speak without him barking orders at me." Amaka grunted. That's how roosters and hens argue before eggs start showing." She leaned closer. "Just don't be stupid. And if you must fall in love, fall with sense. Kingdoms have collapsed over less. One more thing." Amaka turned, voice firm again. "If you break their hearts, I will break your career. Are we clear?" Chica nodded. "Crystal, Ma." Then she waved her hand like royalty. "Go. The twins are painting the cat again." It was twilight when Auntie Amaka spotted him. King Donald stood alone on the west balcony, high above the gardens. Below, Chica twirled Ogay in a blur of pink chiffon, while George chased bubbles and MMA organized a mock wedding between her teddy bear and a peacock feather fan. Their laughter rose like incense into the air. He didn't move, didn't blink. Auntie Amaka, arms folded beneath the folds of her ankara blouse, watched him watch Chica. She approached without sound, as only women of her generation had mastered, and when she finally spoke, her voice was low, laced with knowing. "You stand like a man looking at rain after surviving drought, but you haven't decided if you want to drink." The king didn't turn. "I'm observing my children," he said. She scoffed. "Your children indeed. It's her that you stare at like she holds thunder in her waist." He closed his eyes briefly. "Auntie, now don't auntie me. You are my brother's son. I bathed you. I watched grow into a man, get married, become the king. I also watched your heart break the day Naomi died. I watched it harden every day since. But now I see it peeking out from behind your ribs like a small boy asking if it's safe to come out. And I'm here to encourage it to jump out." He turned slowly and said, "Naomi was irreplaceable. She still is. No one's asking you to replace her. But that woman downstairs?" She gestured toward the courtyard. "She came with warmth in her hands, healing in her songs. You think your children learned French and started sleeping through the night just because you increased the palace budget?" Donald lowered his gaze. "She challenges me," he muttered. "She should. You don't need another statue in your life. You need someone who brings wisdom into your judgment and fire into your life. You need to live again." Silence stretched between them. Deep. Still. He knew she was right. Then softer this time. "If your heart wants her, don't deny it anymore. You've mourned your wife for over 4 years now. It's time to move on. The children needs a mother in their lives and they already adore her, and I can never miss the love in her eyes for them. Naomi will want you to move on and be happy too." With that, she turned and walked away, her slippers whispering wisdom in every step. But something had shifted, like gravity, like fate leaning in. It happened on the night of the palace's foundation gala. Chica hadn't planned to attend. It was a royal event filled with titles, gowns that swept the floor like mist, and conversations laced with politics. She was just the nanny after all, but Princess Emma had begged, "Please, Chica, just come. You always miss the dancing." So, she wore a floor-length wine-red dress with flowing sleeves and gold threadwork. Her hair, usually wrapped, tumbled down her back in soft coils. When she entered the marble ballroom, the chatter dulled, heads turned, and from the far end of the room, King Donald watched her like she was gravity itself. Later that night, after the music had faded and the guests had gone, Chica wandered out to the palace's moonlit garden, barefoot, heels in hand. She didn't hear him approach, but somehow she knew he would. "Running from the ball, Cinderella?" Donald asked quietly behind her. She turned slowly. You found me. I always do. They stared at each other beneath the glowing lanterns, silence pulsing between them like a shared secret. I wasn't supposed to feel this way again, he admitted, his voice low, raw. I buried too much of myself after Naomi. I thought if I let anyone in, it would betray her memory. But every time you laugh, the house breathes. Every time you speak, the children grow braver. And I keep finding excuses to be where you are. Chica didn't move. Her eyes shimmered. I'm falling in love with you, Chica. The air stilled. And then, like it had always belonged, his hand found hers. I know, she whispered. I've been falling too. He stepped closer. No throne, no title, no crown. Just a man and a woman. And beneath the velvet sky, their first kiss arrived like a promise fulfilled. Slow, reverent, and utterly undeniable. The kiss beneath the moonlight did not end the story. It quietly turned the page. The following days unfolded like the first days of rainy season. Soft, nourishing, irresistible. Donald and Chica were subtle at first. A touch here, a glance too long, an almost smile shared across the children's breakfast table. One bright, colorful evening, Emma pulled George and Oge into the nursery closet with a suspiciously official tone. Let's beg Auntie Chica to marry Daddy so that she will become our new mommy, she whispered, pulling out a hand-drawn fake love letters, strategically spilled juice, and one perfectly timed bedtime lullaby duet. George gasped. Will she agree? I don't know, but we have to try, Emma said with a grin. Let's tell Daddy to marry her too. Oge chipped in. With that said, the children matched into their nanny's room, knelt and started begging her to get married to their daddy and be their new mom. Chica was speechless and shocked to her bones. Please get up from the floor, she pleaded, but they refused and continued begging while holding onto her legs until she promised them to think about. Only then did they joyfully stood up and ran to their father's room and jumped on his body excitedly. Daddy, we begged Miss Chica to marry you and be our new mommy, and she agreed to think about it. Now we want you to beg to marry you too, so that she will agree after thinking about it. We love her so much, he bursted into laugh. I was already planning to do that, but you guys beat me to it. Nevertheless, let's go back to her room and beg her again. On getting to Chica's room, Donald cleared his throat, went down on one knee, smiling with a diamond ring on his hand. Chica, you're the sunshine we never thought we could have back. You bedolzed into our lives and restored happiness, laughter, and hope. I'm the luckiest person alive because you are my woman, and I want you to remain an important part of our lives. Will you do me the honor of being my wife and the mother to our children? The children shouted happily and echoed, Miss Chica, please say yes and be our mommy. And yes, she did say. Their shouts drew Auntie Amaka, the guards, maids, and other workers in the palace into the living room. Everyone cheered and celebrated their engagement. Donald caught her mid-step with a chuckle and whispered loud enough for the crowd to hear. I love you. Thunderous applause followed. And so it was. The king who had buried his heart found it blooming in the arms of a woman who never once asked for his crown, only his healing. The children danced barefoot the night their father proposed beneath the udala tree. Auntie Amaka nearly fainted from laughter and joy, and the palace sang again. Not because a queen returned, but because love did. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this story? Do share your thoughts with me in the comment section.